What's going on, people? Welcome back to another episode of Gen Sports Corner. Picking this thing up over the past week or so, and I wanted to talk about the fight that happened on Saturday night. Oshaquiefoster defeated Raymond Ford, Camden native, by decision, and retained his title. And now listen, man, that was a really. Some people may not like the fight. I liked it as a high-level chess match. It played out similarly to the way I thought it would. I picked Foster in my prediction video, and some of the reasons why I thought that Oshaquiefoster was going to beat Ray Ford was, one, I thought his IQ was just a little bit higher, and that's what I mentioned, even though they both have high IQs. Two, the reach, and he knows how to use it, and he's intent on using his reach advantage. 72-inch reach versus Ray Ford's 69-inch reach. And he was able to effectively keep Ray Ford on the outside. And then third, why I thought that it could either be a mix between a 55 to 45 fight, 55% in favor of Foster, 45% in favor of Ford, in addition to also possibly being a 65-35 fight in favor of Foster, is because when Ray Ford lets his emotions control him as opposed to him embracing and channeling his emotions, I would say correctly, for lack of a better word, at the current moment, he puts the earmuffs on and he just walks forward, and it's like he forgets that he knows how to box, and it's like he sees tunnel vision, like he sees red. And he was the bull in the ring, and at a certain point Oshaki became the matador, and Ray Ford was trying to walk him down. And as the fight progressed, it became more and more apparent that although the first, I would say, 5 to 6 rounds were very competitive, back and forth, it seemed like Oshaki was able to come out in the 7th round, start making some adjustments, and begin to start pulling away a little bit. And Ray Ford had a good 10th round from what I can recall. But then round 11, Oshaki came out and he started to piece him up a little bit in the 11th round. And then the 12th round, it was another Oshaki round. And he capped off that fight in a strong fashion. And I had the fight 8-4 in favor of Oshaki. I could see 9-3 as well. And the scorecards somewhat reflected that. There were some crazy scorecards. I mean, 114 to 114. I didn't see the fight that way. I thought that it was a very competitive fight, but I thought that 114 for Ray Ford, I just didn't see that. 118 to 110, insane scorecard. That's highly disrespectful. But 116 to 112, whatever judge had that scorecard, that's the one right there. I thought that was a very fair score. And I think Oshaki, he made a statement that night. And to be fair, and mind you, like I said before in my video, I'm from Camden County. Born and raised here. Camden's like 2 or 3 towns over from me. We support our hometown fighters. But he lost fair and square. But I thought that he still had a good showing of himself, and I still think that he's the real deal. I think he needs to change his tactics, and this is Ray Ford. Change his tactics, and I'll get into some of the things he can change. And also, just experience. He was just a little bit green, and I think he got caught up in the moment emotionally at times in that fight. And one of the things I could say that Ray Ford can change, for all the boxing heads listening out there, and the people that are into fighting or combat sports, this is something that, if you looked at the Ray Ford and Oshaquiefoster fight, that Ray Ford could have done differently. He never got off the center line. He never changed angles. He never used a whole lot of head movement. Not a lot of lateral movement. He was just straight up and down, no special effects, like Floyd Mayweather would say. I think that's what Floyd would say. Yeah, straight up and down, no special effects. Even though he has the athletic ability, and I think the IQ, to do otherwise. So I think that's something he can go back in the lab and work on. And then secondly, one jab and then trying to enter into the void, the space between you and your opponent. At a certain point, it got repetitive, predictable, And if you have the shorter reach, you got to start varying it up. Either you double or triple the jab up, or you start feinting the jab. Like, I didn't see enough activity. You know, moving your head off center line, moving that jab around. You look at some of these Eastern Bloc fighters. They got shorter reaches like Lomachenko, but they always find ways to get into the comfort zone of their opponent because they have really good footwork and they use head and hand feints and they get off the center line. Manny Pacquiao's another one of them. Not an Eastern Bloc fighter, but the same concept. Constant perpetual motion, making it mentally exhausting for the opponent to deal with you. So those are things that Ray Ford, I think, can do that he didn't do during the fight. So this fight played out the way I thought it did. I thought it would. I thought it would be Oshaki by decision. That's the way it turned out. And then after the fight, and in the second half of my video, this is what I was alluding to when I was saying that he was calling Shakur Stevenson and Raymond Ford and I never get his name right, Hitchens. Those three, he was calling them the whatever, man, the Legion of Doom or the Justice Friends or whatever, the Avengers. And he was saying, listen, man, y'all want to be buddy-buddy. Y'all want to act like boxing is supposed to be this kumbaya and we're all holding hands by the fire and if we're friends that I can't fight you. He's like, no, man, like, let's get that straight. And then second off, why all you guys seem like you're plotting on my downfall, acting like you want to find out how I'm doing in sparring. You ask my sparring partners, oh, how Oshaki looking? Is he looking good? He looking bad? It's like, man, like, why don't y'all just... But then when it's time to fight, y'all don't want to say nothing. So I thought it was very interesting after the fight. Shakur Stevenson was at the fight in the crowd. And as soon as the fight was over, Oshaki went over to the ropes and they was jawing back and forth. He told him, hey, come in the ring. And Shakur went into the ring and they was going at it. He said, look what I beat your son. Now I want you in the ring. Right? Now let me know if y'all want to see that fight. Because I thought this was a very good fight. I thought both fighters fought very well. I just thought that Oshaki had more. And now Shakur, what excuse is there for him to not fight Oshaquiefoster now? The zone is now the big player on the block. A lot of these fighters are signing to the zone and or I guess some are signing to Zuffa or whatnot. But I think Top Rank is with the zone now. So now a lot of the promoters and many of the fighters are under the same banner. So you can't say, oh, he's on the other side of the street, so we can't fight. No, we all under the same banner. Or a lot of the logistical things that were stopping these fights from happening, they don't exist anymore, or to the degree they did. So are you gonna fight me, Shakur? She said, shake my hand like a man. Now I wouldn't. Listen, like, he ain't going to go down to 130 to fight him. So, like, I wouldn't be handshaking in the ring on that. But the gauntlet has been laid out. So let me know. Do y'all want to see Shakur Stevenson against Oshakiefoster? And if you don't know who Oshakiefoster is, I don't know how you don't know after that fight. Go look up his highlights, including the win over Ray Ford. Do you want to see him fight Shakur Stevenson? Or do you want to see him fight Navarrete, who is in the top 10 pound for pound? And then third, do you think Oshakiefoster is a top 10 pound for pound fighter after that performance against a very, very good fighter in Ray Ford? Let me know your thoughts. Secondly, and I'm not going to get it to in this video, but Dmitry Bivol had a very, very nice win over his opponent, dominated, made his statement, and that's a good win in preparation for his fight against David the Monster Benavidez. You know that fight's coming up. So, Ryan, I'm going to be talking about that. Benavidez is going to be fighting Dmitry Bivol. You remember Bivol, when he fought Beterbiev, that guy. So, we gotta talk about that fight, brother. And then lastly, since you're here, and whoever else is going to be watching, let's talk about the freaking NFL today. And somehow, the A.J. Brown trade wasn't even the big blockbuster news of the day. But since we're talking about it, A.J. Brown was traded to the New England Patriots. Surprise, surprise, for their 2028 first round pick and a conditional 2027 next year's fifth rounder from New England, whatever is the highest out of their 2 fifth round picks. So at the end of the day, at least the Eagles got something for AJ Brown, because he really killed his trade value with a lot of the hoopla that was going on last year and in the off season. But fortunately, we were still able to get a first round pick, at least within the next 2 years, which is, it is what it is. And now Devontae Smith is going to be wide receiver number one. So I think this was a foregone conclusion. As soon as the June 1st deadline hit, everybody knew that that was going to be the day where things were probably going to happen, and it shook out that way. And um, let me know what you guys feel about AJ's tenure. I can talk about that in another video. You know, how people feel. Do you feel as though you have gratitude for everything he did while he was here? Or do you feel like he left out on a very sour note? Or are you somewhere in between? I think the TO situation is a good litmus test, a good comparison. How do you feel about TO if you were around for that, compared to the situation with how it ended with AJ? Whereas TO is still beloved by many in this town, despite not winning a ring, because he played like a dog in that Super Bowl. Whereas AJ, there are mixed feelings, even though he bought us a ring and had, although we remember the dagger, he had a touchdown before that in that game where it just, he put us up 24-0, and he torched whoever was covering him, and then he did that Decepticon goose step in the end zone, and that's the image that a lot of us are going to have of AJ. This, regardless of whether you feel as though he could have handled things better. So let me know what you think about that. Reading the comments real quick. Ryan says definitely got to catch that fight. Absolutely, I'm not gonna miss it. If you don't order it, I am. I'm gonna order it. So if you want to watch it here or wherever you're gonna watch it, let's do it, man. Because that's not the only fight that's going down. I'll go down the slate before I end this video. There's actually a lot of big fights coming out this year. But I wanted to flip over from the Eagles to the Rams, because the Rams, who were probably a heavy odds-on favorite to win the Super Bowl, maybe they were in the top three in terms of who would be projected to win. They have to be a heavy favorite after this trade, trading for Myles Garrett. Listen, they traded Jared Verse and a first-round pick, a second-round pick, and a third-round pick. I don't know what years each one of those picks are, but regardless, a first, a second, and a third, along with Jared Verse, who is a young star in the making, for Myles Garrett, who probably is the best defensive player in the NFL right now and set the sack record with 23 last year, I believe, with the Browns. I was hoping that the Eagles were in the mix for Myles Garrett, and I'll actually be looking at some of the news in the upcoming days to see if there were any rumblings behind the scenes. Maybe the Eagles were trying to make a move for him and it didn't happen. You would wonder if they were looking at a team like the Rams and also considering trading for Myles Garrett because they didn't want to lose the arms race to the Rams. Because you look at this Rams defense, they were already really good last year. They were already lights out last year. And now they have an upgrade over Jared Verse, and you put this dude on that defense, he could possibly be their new Aaron Donald. He just plays defensive end. I mean, what else can you say about him? And beyond just the numbers he puts up, the character, on and off the field, he's everything you want in a football player. So I think that they got excellent value. The Browns did, but so did the Rams. Because a couple years ago, the Rams made a big trade. Can't remember if it was Jalen Ramsey or him or another player, but it turned out into a Super Bowl for them. Oh yeah, my bad. Jared Goff for Matt Stafford. I'm tripping. And then made a trade for Jalen Ramsey. I don't know if he was part of that Super Bowl team too, but they went all in, got their ring, and then had a barren 2 or 3 years after that. But who cares? Once you get the ring, who cares if you're trash for 2 years after? Most teams can't even get the ring while worrying about the future. So, and now they've read up. And Ryan asks, how do I feel about the trade overall value wise? Are you talking about the Rams trade or the Eagles trade? With the Eagles trade, I mentioned it earlier. I think it was the best value they could get considering all the factors that were in play in terms of how things played out in the media and how much leverage that Harry Roseman really actually had after all those things happened. And I think Howie did a good job of hedging himself by getting Makai Lemon. So it put us in a position where it's like, yeah, we're planning to trade him, but we're set now, right? Like we don't. It's not that you don't need a big haul for AJ Brown, or you're not looking for one, but it's like you're not trying to trade him out of desperation. If it came down to it, ultimately, I don't know if they would do it, but hey, you're gonna stay here for another year, and then we'll just make a super team with you and Smitty and Makai and just make it work. But realistically, at least you had a really high level receiver coming out of the draft, and you already have Smitty, who's a wide receiver 1 anyway. So I think they got as good of a return as they could get, but I think that the Rams and the Browns both won their trade as well. I think the Rams won because now they're going to be a juggernaut this year, and then the Browns, you get pieces, man. You weren't going anywhere with Myles Garrett anyway. You were just going to waste the next 4 or 5 years of his prime. So let him go somewhere else, and preferably for them in the opposite conference. And now they're able to take those picks and continue to build. So I think the Browns actually had a good draft from what I can remember. So now they can continue building over these next 2 or 3 years, and then see what they got there. They already have a really good defense. Sans Myles Garrett. Now Myles Garrett obviously is a huge piece of that defense, but they were strong up the middle. They just had the fact that their defense was so good allowed Myles Garrett to get those 23 sacks. Maybe he would have got 15 without a great defense, but with a very solid defense, that give you another 6 to 8. And we'll see what the Browns do. Like I said, with the AJ trade, I think it was the best value we could get. So now we have a 2028 first round pick. Now you can look to see, okay, what is on the horizon in 2028 for that draft class, or you can have collateral next year in the draft to maybe trade for another piece. Let's say you go to the playoffs. Sans winning a Super Bowl, trying to reload in the offseason, now you have another first round draft pick to work with. But even as it is now, I think the Eagles have a very, very strong team, because I think the question going into this year from my perspective is not will the offense be better. I think they're going to be better by default just because you got rid of Kevin Patullo. It's about how much better than ass are you going to be without A.J. Brown? That's the question. With or without A.J. Brown, they're going to be better this year because you just don't have somebody who's half brain dead calling the plays. I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to see that. But you have a new offensive coordinator, and you have a different plethora of receivers outside of Smitty. So Smitty and Goddard, they're mainstays, but outside of that, you have a smaller receiver core. So how do they approach attacking the field? Are they going to start attacking the middle of the field more? I think I was looking at an article where it said that in his NFL career, Jalen Hurts has only thrown, 99 passes over the middle of the field out of whatever umpteen attempts he's had in his career. Do they start attacking the middle of the field more? Really stretching out and stressing the defense across the entire span of that football field as opposed to just operating outside the hash marks? Do they start using motion? From what I've heard in OTAs, they're actually bringing Smitty in motion for a purpose as opposed to just moving him left and right like a 10-year-old in Madden just to move him. Like there's actually a purpose for it. Like you're setting up things off of that. So there's so many things that they can do. The question is, how will this offense look? And I think we'll know more once we get into the actual training camp and into the preseason games. We'll get an actual visual of what this offense will probably look like. And then having the offensive line back healthy, having Lane Johnson back healthy, having Cam Jurgens back, pun intended, from the back surgery. He was never right last year. He was never right. And the thing about back injuries is they can be tricky compared to other ones, and you got to heal it right. And if you don't, good luck walking, let alone playing football, let alone playing one of the toughest spots to have that type of injury at center, right? Where you're taking on a 300-pound defensive tackles every play in the run or the pass game. So, and then you had Landon Dickerson, knee issue from his injury the year prior, and then accrued a back injury last year as well, later on in the season. So, like, these guys, even if they're a fraction of what they are at full strength, they'll definitely be better than the injured version of themselves. And I think they'll be closer to the full strength version of themselves than they were the version of themselves last year when they were just the walking dead. So I think that the combination of the line being healthy, along with having a competent offensive coordinator, is going to do wonders for this offense, even with AJ gone. The question is, do you go from 0 to 100 again, or do you go from 0 to 50? Do you go from 0 to 80? But the point is, any of those numbers is better than 0. And I won't say 0. They were able to do some things at some times, but hell, let's give them a 30 out of 100. I'll be generous. They were still hot ass cheeks last year on offense. They will be better than that. And along with this defense, that's pretty much the same with Vic Fangio and Makuba coming back from injury, I think they're going to be in a good spot. The question is, how are they going to look during the season and stack up against now an even stronger team with the LA Rams? So let me know what y'all think about that. Hopefully that answered your question, Ryan. I was able to touch on a couple of points that people wanted to hear about. But with that being said, let me shift back over to boxing again and try to find a list of fights coming up. See if I can find this here. But one fight I can tell you why I'm looking for this list is Canelo Alvarez is back, and he will be fighting against Christian Mbili. And if you're still there, Ryan, Christian Mbili, I think I mentioned him to you before, and maybe you saw his highlights, but this dude, I'm telling you, man, he's dangerous. He said, Canelo, you're an old man. You coming back to try to take what's mine, because he has the title at 160, yeah, 160, I think. He might have it at 160, maybe at 168 after it was taken from Crawford. I don't know, but I feel like that's an extremely tough fight for Canelo. He's more experienced, but in Billy, he not going nowhere. And he's one of them dudes that maybe he don't, but maybe he do. He might walk through them Canelo punches, man. And when he get hands on Canelo, he not going to be going for all the head feints. He going to the body. He going to try to bully him. So that's a great fight that's coming up. And then obviously Bivol and Benavidez. We don't know if the Manny Pacquiao and Mayweather fight's still happening, but those are the three that I can think off the top of my head. But there are a few other ones of note. Oh, the other fight that got made is Naoya Inoue and Bam Rodriguez. So for those that are not really tuned into boxing, Naoya Inoue is the monster. Not the Mexican monster like Benavidez. He's the Japanese monster. You know what I'm saying? And he just had a big win over his rival, fellow countryman, Junto Nakatani, who was number 5 on the pound-for-pound list. And now Inoue is sitting at number 1, and Nakatani dropped down to 7 because he's still an elite fighter. And Bam Rodriguez might be at number 5, or he might be top 5 on the pound-for-pound list. I think the Rings pound-for-pound list. And I think they worked out a deal for him and Inoue to fight. Now that's another one I'm looking forward to. I'm going to be tracking that one closely. I'm a huge fan of Inoue, and I'm an avid fan of Bam. Even though I don't get to see a lot of his fights, I done seen some of his highlights. He's the goods. So that's another one I'm looking for. But with that said, let me know what you guys think about the win of Oshaquiefoster over Raymond Ford. Let me know what you think about the AJ Brown trade for the football fans, and what you think about the Myles Garrett trade, him going to the Rams. And then lastly, back to boxing, what fights coming up are you most excited for? And they could be some that I have not listed here as well. Maybe in my next video I'll have a list of some of the other ones that I just can't bring to mind right now. But I hope y'all enjoyed the feed. And hey, listen, it's Go Birds to the end. They ain't going to change. We just going to see what we're going to do this year. All right. Talk to y'all on the next one. Peace.